Hi, I'm Simon. Thanks for tuning in to The Ordinary Filmmaker. Before getting to your questions for this week, here's a quick newscap. Sigma is supposed to be releasing lenses for the Nikon Z mount and the Canon RF mount. No dates were specified, and sadly, no focal lengths were leaked. Now, with the RF mount gaining momentum, it's really no surprise that Sigma would eventually produce lenses for the RF mount. The only question has been when. Canon also registered 3 new zoom lens patents, the 30-110 f2.8, expected to be an L series, the 35-135L f2.8, and the 40-150, also an f2.8. I sometimes wonder if Canon files patents just to confuse us, to dig up some interesting news. Personally, I'd rather see the 70-135 f2 or even a 135mm f2 prime. But that's it for news. It's been a very slow news cycle, and I don't really expect that much to change in the weeks before Christmas. I also released a tutorial video about how to shoot the moon. I grabbed shots of the moon and video of the moon at night and during the day, discussing some of the issues a first-timer might have, like dealing with heat haze and other atmospheric conditions, distortions. But now it's time to answer your questions. Do you have a question? Would you like it answered in this form? Well, post it in the comment section down below, and I might very well answer your question next week. But before we get to our first question, just a reminder to please subscribe to The Ordinary Filmmaker. It really helps this channel grow. And now for our first question. Paul asks, by mistake, I filmed at 1/30th shutter at 30 frames per second. I should have been at 1/60th, but the video came out okay. Did my camera actually film at 1/30th? Or did it correct my settings, as it seems impossible to film like that with no space between each frame? Well, Paul, it's to a large degree about motion blur, and it's about creating a certain look. The 180-degree shutter rule, not to be confused with the 180-degree rule, that's to do with how you film, and we're not going to get into that, but the 180-degree shutter rule basically says that whatever your frame rate is, if it's 30 frames per second, then your shutter should be 60. Which is actually not 60, it's actually 1/60th. If you shoot at 120 frames per second slow motion, then your shutter should be 240. And it really boils down to trying to create that film look, or that, because this is a holdover from the film days, and it's what gives you that sort of closest to what it actually is. 1/30th isn't going to look bad. I shot with 1/30th for a long time, but I just find that when you double it, it just looks that much better. Now, if you decide to shoot slow motion, set it to 240 and forget, and you shoot at 30 frames per second with it still at 240, things will definitely look a little weird. If you move your hand, it's going to look like, I know it's very squirrely. It's just not going to look very natural. So for right now, while you're learning, double it, and that's a good rule of thumb. Outside of that, if you do it at 1/30th, you're probably not going to notice a huge amount of difference unless there's a lot of movement in the frame. Del Westall asks, are there any new rumors or information about the missing RF f2.0 zooms to complete the new Trinity? I already got the RF 28-70 and would love to catch them all. No, we recently got a lot of information coming from Canon rumors of what they expected in 2021. Lots of 100mm telephotos, super telephotos, but very little about this Trinity. And I've got a huge list of lenses here. Let me show you this. These are all the lenses that we're supposed to be having coming out this year. And you can see that some of these rumors were last mentioned way back in April of 2019. And I try to do my best to keep this up to date. You can see the source, you can see when it was last mentioned, you can see the category. Now, if it's a patent filing or a patent filing, these could be a very long time before we see anything, if at all. Now, if it's a rumor, there's a greater likelihood that we'll see it, but only if it's a CR2 or CR3, and you'll notice that most of these are categorized as a CR1, which means they're not necessarily coming from credible sources, and there's no validation. So when it comes to lenses, unfortunately, this is the last we have. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the, to complete that Trinity. I'm looking to see about some other lenses too. We did get an update on the 250mm, the 500mm, 18-45, the 24mm, which is the 24mm f2.8. I really wish that had been a 16mm or even a 14mm. I would have bought it in a hurry, but 24mm? No. I want 16 or 18. So sadly, this list here is really it's a snapshot of everything. So I got a bunch of lens questions based on when is it coming out. And this is the latest information that I have right now. And my next question is along similar lines, but it's dealing with APS-C. Sean asks, have you heard about the Canon Rebel 14mm f1.0 and f1.2 lens? I saw it online about 5 months ago and nothing since. And as you could see, Sean, from my last list, 5 months ago is actually pretty recent when it comes to lens rumors. It seems like lens rumors come out all the time and there's very little validation. So no, I haven't heard anything. And unfortunately, we just got to wait patiently. I'm getting frustrated myself. I really want a 14 or 16mm, and I could probably do with an 18, maybe even a 20, but I'm really looking for something I can use as a vlogging lens, and sadly, there's very little in terms of rumors. Boography asks, do you think we'll get an update for the R5 and R6 as a Christmas present? You know what? That would be the right thing to do. I really wish Canon would do that, but based on the previous rumor from Canon Rumors, they did state that, yes, we're going to be getting lots of great updates, but the next one's going to be in Q1, which is kind of strange. Why just give us, usually we get updates saying it's going to be in a couple of months or something, but to just say, it's Q1? I don't know. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed. That little 9-year-old, 11-year-old deep inside me saying, come on, Santa, bring us a firmware update for the R5 and the R6, and not just any old firmware. You know the one we want. The one that gives us everything we want. Removes the 30-minute record limit. We all know that one's not too hard to code. Sure, 120 frames per second and 1080 for the R5 again. It's just a menu item, right? And what about C-Log 3? Yeah, come on. That and Cinema Raw Light would make R5 owners very, very happy. But do I think, realistically, we'll get those within a couple of weeks? No. Do I wish? Yes. Am I still dreaming about it? Definitely. Nick asks, for a hybrid photo-video shooter who needs 2 cameras, do you think it would be better to have 2 hybrid cameras such as 2 EOS R bodies, or 1 dedicated video camera and 1 dedicated photo camera such as a C200 and an EOS R? There's really 4 ways I can go with this. Now, it really depends on what the capabilities you're looking for. What kind of work do you do? Are you an amateur? Are you a hobbyist? Are you a professional? Do you do event work? You see where I'm going? So let's look at a couple of scenarios. If you're going to go with, let's say, an EOS, you mentioned the EOS R, so cameras in that line is the EOS R, you've got the R6 and the R5, and the EOS R is a good camera, but something like the R6 as a dedicated photo-centric camera, I forget the video, just for the photo capabilities, it's got the same processor as the 1DX Mark III, it's got the new autofocus system, it's got dual card slots, and as a professional, I would really try to push into that R6, and it's going to have you covered photo-wise. And as far as fast frame rates, it's going to be fast enough with continuous autofocus that you're going to be able to use it everything, well, for other than, a professional sports photographer. But even still, with what I'm getting is somewhere around 7 to 8 frames per second with the R5 with continuous autofocus, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that kind of covers off stills. Yes, the EOS R is still good value, but you want to look at the capabilities that you want, because the difference in technology between the EOS R and the R6, Nick, is really, really significant. So let's take a look on the video side now. So video-wise, a video-centric camera, you mentioned the C200, but a lot's getting refreshed. A lot was refreshed last year, and we're going to see a lot refreshed this year. The C70 was recently released. We're going to see a C50 and a C90, and who knows what else. We got the C300 Mark III, which is quite a bit more expensive at around $11,000. But if you look at the C70, I would think that the C70 with a Ninja 5 external recorder is going to have you pretty well covered for video. I think that's a terrific camera. And there's another question coming up where we get to talk about the EF to R optical adapter. C300 with the optical adapter and the Ninja 5 is going to have you covered video-wise. And I think the R6 with that would be really good for most situations, whether you're a professional, if you're an amateur that's looking to branch off into professional stuff. You've got really good stills capabilities with the R6, and you've got really good video capabilities with the C70. And if you're sticking with Canon. See, if you start to look outside of Canon, look at Sony. Sony's coming out with the A7 IV. And we've already got the A7S III, so it's a pretty solid video-centric. I'd still call it a video-centric camera. It's still based off of a stills kind of video hybrid, a stills hybrid. It's got all that technology. It's a mirrorless camera. It's not even though it's focused on video, you're using an architecture that's meant for photos. Once you go into the cinema line, like the FX9, you've got built-in ND filters. You've got all sorts of technology that's just based on video. The autofocus is based on video. So, you know, don't just think you're locked in with Canon. Yes, you've got a lot of lenses to choose from. Yes, you can take all that EF lens glass. You can use the RF glass. So those are some of the options. The other option is you can go with, you know, an EOS R and something like the R5 and use the video capabilities of the R5. But I think, you know, unless you live in really cold climates, that's going to be a problem. The R5 is a tremendous camera for shooting stills. It does really good with video. It's what I'm using right now, but a lot of wedding event type stuff that happens in the summer when the sun is at its hottest, when it's very hot, you don't want to be out there shooting and then your camera overheats or only have 2 minutes of video. So while I think the R5 is a terrific camera for photography, I wouldn't be counting on it for video in the summer months, not if you're a professional. Maybe get something like the R6, which is almost as capable photo-wise, and then a dedicated video camera, which is kind of what you're suggesting. So I think that's a good way to go. And most professionals, after they've been in the business for a while, they no longer just have one body. They usually have multiple bodies. Some will even have Canon and Nikon and some others, but you're generally going to have multiple bodies, not because you're rich, but because you want to have your lenses ready to go. You'll have a 70-200 on one. You might have a 50mm or an 85mm on the other, and you want them ready to go. So there's, you know, planning it out, being very strategic at the beginning is very, very useful. But Nick, the biggest thing is I need to know what capabilities you're looking for, what kind of work you do, and then it's much better to advise. So I've kind of answered the question, Nick, more to a very generic type of question, so it can apply to a lot of people as well. Ali asks, is there much of a difference between the RF50 f1.8 and the old EF50 1.8 STM? Is it worth double the price? Well, Ali, if I had the EF version of this lens, I would pretty well just stick with that. I'm not seeing enough in the RF to really get me to want to buy it. But, you know, I also had the EF 50mm f1.2, and I ended up selling it to buy the RF version. But I didn't do it right away. It took me some time, and I just finally had the urge, and I went out and got it. So if you eventually do want to go to the RF, you'll see some optical improvements. It's not going to be huge. You can always sell your EF version of the lens. It's very popular, and get back maybe half the money to put towards the RF. But in terms of specs, I'm looking at the spec sheet here, and focus is 30 versus 35. Magnification is 0.25x versus 2.1. And, well, here's the one thing that might make a difference is you're going to have better image stabilization. And I know what some of you are thinking, Simon, it doesn't have image stabilization. Well, it kind of does. So if we put this on an R5 or an R6, it's got the new IBIS in it, not the EOS R because it doesn't have IBIS, but the R5 and the R6 have IBIS. So we put it on there. Because it's an RF glass, it's going to work better with the image stabilization in the body, producing better stops. So that is the one thing where you're going to get better stabilization. So if you're shooting in low light, you're shooting inside, then yeah, the RF might produce better results for you. But that's at what point I'm going to start to say, well, wait a minute, if you're really interested in better results optically, if you're interested in better image stabilization, then maybe set your sights on getting the EF 1.2, which is a whole lot cheaper than the RF 1.2. I was using the EF 1.2 for photos and video for a little bit, and I was very impressed with the results. It's terrific. Sure, the RF version, it's not silent, the motor, you still hear it. The quality, it's sharper, yes, but you know what? No one's going to be upset with the quality of the 50mm f1.2 on the EF. So if it was me, I probably wouldn't update or upgrade right away. But you know, it's you sit around your house, you got a lot of free time. Eventually, the voices in your head speak to you, and you run out and get it. So, yeah, I know I should have gotten right to the point on this one, but yeah, I would probably just stick with the EF version. A soldier asks, what HDMI cable do you recommend for the R5 to use with the Atmos Ninja 5? Well, you can go with the one supplied by Atmos, and boy, is that one expensive. Like you really do feel like you've just strapped on razor blade underwear and you're going swimming in an alcohol pool there. It's painful. But I will say this, Even though HDMI, you're talking about digital at zeros and ones, shielding does matter. It makes a huge difference. I bought a cable for my Xbox many years ago, and this wasn't one of the latest ones. It was an older one. And I just thought, it's digital. What difference does it make? I'm not going to get one of these stupid monster cables for $30. I'm just going to get a cheap one for $8. And you know what? I did notice some artifacts. When certain appliances got turned on, I'd get noise on the screen. And there's no sense in getting a Ninja 5, getting a camera like the R5 or the R6, and cheaping out on the cable. Now, you don't necessarily have to go with the one supplied by, I was going to say Angelbird. No, Atomos. You can get... All I would say is you want to get a HDMI 2.0. It needs to be shielded really, really well. At this point, you're not going to be able to take advantage of HDMI 2.1, so go with the 2.0 and get something that's really shielded. And if you're using it for the Ninja 5, one thing you might want to keep an eye on or think about is it coiled? How long is it? Because it's basically going to go from the camera to the Ninja, and when you rotate it around, you need a little bit of play, but you don't want to have the cable to be too long. So one thing I did like about the one supplied by Atomos, it is coiled, but it's such a thick cable that even when I rotated it around, there's a lot of resistance in that cable. So I wasn't completely happy with it, but if you can get a short coil cable, I think that's the best, or maybe just get a 3-foot version. If it's too heavy, then you're going to have it pulling down on the HDMI port on the R5, and we don't want that, because if you bust that, it's connected right to the circuit board, and guess what? We've got an expensive repair. Stop the FOMO asks, what kind of crop would I expect when using a full-frame RF lens like the 50mm f1.2 on the C70 with a Super 35 sensor? You always ask the really good questions and the ones that really make me think. It's kind of like any other camera when you're going with a crop sensor. You have to multiply that crop times the focal length to give you the effect that you're going to get. So, for example, if we were using the 24mm, not the 50 that you mentioned, the Super 35 has a 1.5 times crop, so that gives you 36mm, or approximately 36mm. But, and this is a big, big, big opportunity here. When they announced the C70, they announced the EF2R 0.71 optical adapter, which is pretty much a speed booster. You go ahead and put that on there, and now you get 25. You multiply it by 24, multiply it by 0.71, and then by 1.5, and you're at 25.56 or 26 millimeters. So with that optical adapter or speed booster, I'm not sure which to call it. It's pretty much a speed booster. It acts like a speed booster. You even get an extra stop. You want to think of any lens that you're looking at. So the 50mm, you'd apply a crop of 1.03. So when you multiply by 0.71 and times by 1.5, you end up with 1.03 as being the factor there. So if you look at 50mm times 1.03, it's what, 53 millimeters? So there's not that much of a difference. So I'd seriously consider getting that optical adapter. I know it's not cheap. I don't know what it is with Canons, their optical adapters, their teleconverters this year. Yeah, they're very expensive, so that would be my suggestion, FOMO. Zona asks, is Canon going to bring out new products like the Sony A7C that has a small body, full frame, and also some features from previous full frame cameras and priced lower? Well, here's what I do know based on rumors coming out of Canon Rumors, Canon News, is that in 2021 we're going to be getting two cameras of interest for you. One is more or less to succeed or replace the Canon RP. It's going to be an entry-level, low-price, full-frame mirrorless camera. It's going to be cheaper than the EOS RP, which is already around $999 or $899 on sale. What I think they'll do here is they'll take away things like the electronic viewfinder and make that an optional purchase, ways to keep the cost down. It'll be a single card slot, UHS 2. And then there's going to be a camera that sits somewhere between the EOS R in today's current price and the R6, somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be more capable. It's going to be more capable than the EOS R, but not as capable as the R6. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't have any overheat modes, and most likely it will. So those are two cameras I think you should keep an eye on. As far as price goes, I don't know what the price exactly for these are going to be. I would wait in a month or so and we'll probably have a good idea of what these two cameras are going to be. We probably should have an announcement before March and probably be on the market by the end of June. Jodoc asks, I got my Canon R6 2 days ago, inspired by you, and I'm so happy with it. Can you please tell me where I can find the cropped mode? I didn't find them in the menu. I'm glad you're happy with it, and just a note to anybody else, if you're looking at buying camera gear or cameras themselves, consider my affiliate links down below, because if you purchase it using those links, I get a little bit of a kickback, around 2%, which goes into buying stuff for the channel. And the good news is for you, you're not spending any extra than if you went to these sites by yourself. All right, now to your question. Well, you know what, Jodoc, I actually have the village mayor here, and he's got the answer for you. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks, Simon. It is the village mayor here once again to answer a great question about the R6. And yes, welcome to the Canon R6 family, Jodoc, and you made a great decision to buy the camera. Getting to the basics, APS-C cameras such as the Canon M50 have a 1.6 times crop sensor, which means that it is smaller in size compared to the full-frame cameras that we have, such as the R5 and the R6. Other APS-C camera brands have a 1.52 or a 1.53 cropped sensor. Now, crop factors are important because, for example, a 55 to 200 millimeter telephoto lens in reality is an 88 to 320 millimeter lens. So how does this affect the R6? Well, the R6 actually allows you to choose cropped mode, which then acts as an APS-C camera and adds additional zoom without necessarily altering the image quality and without the need to change lenses. So how do you switch between full, cropped, or other aspect ratios? There are two ways to do this. First, go into Manual or AV settings. Press the menu button, and under the red or camera menu, the first tab, the second option is Cropping Aspect Ratio. Select the option and you will see 5 different options. The button with the 1.6 is the crop mode. A second and easier option is to simply press the Q button, and the bottom right corner you will see Full as the general default. Press the button to give you the same 5 options. So there you have it. I use the crop mode all the time if I want to get that extra zoom and are too lazy to change lenses. Even Simon uses it for his astrophotography, where he has not only used the 800 millimeter, the 2-time extender, but also the 1.6 times crop mode as well. Hope that answers your question, Jodoc.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Mayor. It's always a pleasure having you on the channel. And guys, please check out his channel, The Village Mayor. RV Boondocker asks, have you tried any astrophotography with the RF 15 to 35 millimeter on the R5? Have you tried the 800 millimeter RF lens? What do you think about the 2 times RF adapter on the 800 millimeter RF lens? Okay, RV, I'm going to sense that you haven't been watching my channel much this year. Now, if we go back in time to August, I think it was August, I had the 800 millimeter and I did this review here. And in that review, I shot a lot of wildlife. I shot great shots of pigeons, no, that's not a pigeon, that's a seagull. And I shot pictures of squirrels, and I had a lot of fun with it. I shot ducks, I shot swans. But I also spent a lot of time looking up into the sky, and I shot the moon, I shot Jupiter. I really loved shooting the moon. It was incredible. Unfortunately, I didn't have the 2 times extender back then. So all these shots right here, right now, these are shot with the 800 millimeter in cropped mode without an extender. And these ones of Jupiter, again, cropped mode, 800 millimeter. Now I did leave autofocus on and I should have turned that off. A beginner mistake. But just recently, I published another video on how to shoot the moon, which I talked about at the very beginning of this video. And I was out last weekend. I shot the moon. Sadly, it was low on the horizon. It was the only time I could get a good shot of it. There was a lot of heat haze, which I do talk about that. You can see it right here. And I also shot it at around, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. Beautiful sunny day, and you can see how beautiful the moon looks like. It almost looks fake, doesn't it? But no, that's shot, color balanced, and that's it. So what do I think? I said this when I reviewed the RF 800 millimeter long before anybody else had said it. I said, you know what? Get the RF 800 millimeter. It's a ton of fun. It's the most fun you're going to have with your camera. 15 to 35 is a great lens, but it's very much business-like. The 24 to 105 is a great companion. The 50 millimeter is fun, but the 800 millimeter, it brings out that inner child. It's great for wildlife. It's great for astrophotography, well, I shouldn't say all astrophotography, astro video, where I am, there's so much light pollution, I really can't do any still shots. But an awful lot of fun. And now that I have the RF, the pictures of the moon where I shot last week and the one outside, yeah, I'll flash it up again, that was shot with the 2x extender. It allows you to get real up close. But sadly, because of the weather, because it's December and we get a lot of snow and a lot of cloud, I really haven't had a chance to test out the 2x extender. Here's a tip. If you really want to do moon photography, you want to capture the planets, you want to do any of that stuff, you really want to capture, first of all, you want to be outside of the city so there's not light pollution, but you also want to be shooting directly up. Maybe from, 10 o'clock over to 2 o'clock, you're going to cut through a whole lot less atmosphere. Once you're cutting across the horizon, you can be cutting through hundreds of miles of dense air, and you're going to get all sorts of distortion due to the atmosphere. But once you shoot up, you've only got a good kilometer of really thick air, and then it starts to thin out, giving you less distortion. So I highly recommend the 800mm. I highly recommend the RF. The 15 to 35 is good, but while I had it the same week as the 800mm. I spent all my time with the 800mm. It was just a ton of fun. Popcorn asks, why aren't you doing any collab videos? 0 to 10K was very fast, but 10 to 20K is taking a long, long time. When can we expect a collab video? Well, I think there's two separate things going on there. The amount of collab videos I do or don't doesn't have a big impact on how many subscribers I have. Let's deal with the subscribers first. I really took off from about 5,000, went to 10,000 almost overnight, and that's because we had the R5 announcement, the leaked information, and it was drumming up so much interest. And I was getting, tens of thousands of views per video. Okay, the R5's gone, the A7S III is gone, the R6 is gone. So now it's a whole lot harder to get the views, to get the subscribers. So, if you've got friends who want to subscribe, family members, your pets, cats, dogs, creatures, yeah, let them know. I wouldn't mind some more subscribers. But I'm really looking forward to getting to 20,000 because I've got a preview of the next prize I'm going to be handing out right here, which I'm going to talk about at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. Now, as far as collab videos, Popcorn, where have you been? I just answered a question with the Village Mayor in this video a few questions ago about the R6, the one that Jodoc asks. And last weekend, I did the same thing with the Village Mayor again in my Q&A video. And then there was the review I did of the Crane 2S. He was in that video. And I did 2 other lens reviews with the Village Mayor. So I've done a good 5 collabs already. And you know what? I'm interested in doing more. And anybody else who's got a channel who's watching, Matt, yes, I'm looking at you right now. No, don't try and hide. If you're interested in doing a little bit of collaboration, if it's maybe just taking one of the questions I get and saying, look, I would love to answer that question, let me know. You shoot a video of 3 to 5 minutes for a question and say, hi, I'm Matt, introduce your channel, and then get into answering the question. And, I'm more than happy to do that. I love this collaboration. It's a lot of fun. The videos I've done with Mr. Mayor, they've been some of my most enjoyable ones, and it's sad that we're going on full lockdown on Monday. But anyhow, yes, I'm doing more collabs. Jim asks, should you consider adding a silica desiccant packet or 2 to your plastic bag? I know what some of you are thinking. That's a very personal and weird question by Jim, but if you were watching my video earlier this week, I talked about how to protect your camera during the winter. Oh, twisting like that. So this here is a bag. It's a Ziploc bag. And as you can see, it's huge. It's huge. It's 3 feet by 3 feet. And this bag is so big that I can take my Canon R5 with the 800mm lens attached with the extender, easily put it in that bag, do it outside. So once I'm shooting outside, then put it in the bag, zip it up, and it zips very, very well. Bring it inside, let it sit for a couple of minutes. I usually do 10 or 15 minutes while I grab a cup of tea, put my coat up, my gloves, and all that stuff you do in winter places. And so what I was saying is, look, moisture and electronics, they don't go hand in hand. And if you're constantly shooting outside where the temperature is quite a bit different from what you have inside, it's not just winter. In the summer when I was shooting, sometimes it was hot and humid outside. I'd take my camera from 68 degrees inside, bring it outside, and it just got covered in moisture. So in environments where you're going to have condensation happening, before you bring it into that other environment, or move to that other environment, put it in a plastic bag like this Ziploc, zip it up, bring it to that environment, let it sit for like 10 minutes or so, and then open up and you're fine. You're not going to have any condensation. You're completely bypassing that risk. There's going to be no impact. I know what some of you are thinking. I've never done this and never had a problem. And you know what? I haven't either. My Canon C70D never had a problem with it. But call centers. They'll tell you these problems do happen. The amount of calls Apple gets with damaged laptops because students are going from class to the outside to class, or camera companies, these problems do happen. And you know what? That bag, it was about $2 Canadian. You're looking at about $1.50 US. I mean, that's got to be the cheapest thing you can buy for anybody. And you know what? For your family members, it's a great stocking stuffer. You probably need a pretty big stocking to fit it in there, but you know, I've got the link in this video here. You know, it's like $5.65 US. Just go ahead and get one. They're great value. So the question that Jim was asking, we'll get back to that question right now. Silica, he was saying, would that help? Well, silica works over a longer period of time. I could take 10 of those or a whole pound of them, put them in the bag, or sorry, put them in a bag and not zip it, and I would get condensation. So what those silica things do, those packets, they help pull the moisture out of a container or a bag where stuff is sitting over a period of time. But for what I'm talking about is where you have that instant condensation. The only way to deal with that is a bag. And if you look at your camera's manual, you'll probably see somewhere where they talk about going inside and outside, and they'll say something about a bag. The R5 does. So you don't have to do it. I'm just saying it's something you can do to really help prolong the life of your gear. And our last question is from Christopher. Can we get a cinematic squirrel B-roll sequence in the near future? Yes, Christopher. I'm actually working on a full-length dramatic motion picture film about a lonely squirrel in search of romance during the long winter months. His name is Dave, and he's always on the go. Film coming out in March. No, I'm just kidding. I love wildlife, and in my backyard, which I've gotten to see an awful lot of this year, probably more than I wanted to, I've seen a lot of squirrels. And one of the things I did recently, Chris, I bought a bird feeder, and it wasn't because I wanted to see birds, and I kind of did, but I knew I was getting the RF 800mm, and I knew that taking my lens out is like trying to find water in a desert. It's very difficult. So I thought, well, if I get a bird feeder, then birds are going to come to me, and I can wait for them to show up and then run outside and by the side of the house, shoot them. And I've got some great shots of birds this winter, as you can see right here. So I'm really happy with that bird feeder, and I get to see some squirrels too. There aren't as many squirrels in the winter as I saw in summertime, but squirrels are a little harder to get because it's hard to kind of keep them in one place, and I'm running out of acorns, so I am trying to get some more shots of the squirrels, and I'm going to try and shoot them with the 800mm as well. So, but they're a lot more skittish. They hear a slight sound and they're gone, and trying to chase them with an 800mm isn't the most effective. So great soft question. I love the soft questions as well as the hard questions. And you know I'm talking about you, Mr. FOMO. You always ask the tough questions, always the good soul-searching questions. But that kind of brings us to the end of this week's question, but I do have a special announcement. As I'm sure you're well aware, for those of you who've watched to the end of my video, you'll know that I'm giving away a Synco Lav S6E and M3 shotgun microphone. I've been talking about it for months. And yes, I'm eager to get to 20,000 because it's a respectable amount of subscribers, but I want to introduce my next prize. And this prize is going to be given away to one lucky subscriber once the channel reaches 30,000 subscribers. And I'm going to do a video on this. Once I hit 20,000, I've got to give away the other prizes. So I'm really hoping to reach that milestone. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Ask your sister, your brother, your mother, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your pet squirrel to subscribe. As soon as we can get to 20,000, I can stop talking about those prizes. And these ones here. So the first thing, there's multiple things in the box here. The first thing in the box here is an Angelbird dual card reader, SD card reader. So we get that. You also get a pen. I love these pens. You got the red, you got the blue, you got the black and the green. I keep this upstairs because, you know, I'm one of those digital guys. We're moving from our offices, my day offices, my real job, we're moving locations and I've got to go in and there's very little to move because everything I do is online. I use paper, I use digital copies of everything. But every now and then, schools, they like to send home paper. I have to sign something. So that you've got a pen here. Paper. You can never have enough of this. So here's the big thing right here. So once I do get to 30,000 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away the Angelbird AV Pro SD UHS 2 128 gigabyte card. Not one, but two. This dual cards here. You get dual cards and a dual card SD reader. Perfect for an R6. It's perfect for Sony a7S III. There are a lot of cameras that this is going to be just great for. And what I thought about doing for this time around, I wanted to come out with a prize that was something that would work for everybody. It didn't matter whether you had Canon, whether Sony, Panasonic, or those poor Pentax people and Panasonic. So, oh God, I just pictured Casey's Panasonic Pony and the cripple hammer. See, I thought it was coming to hit me, but he doesn't do that. He only goes and hits Casey. I don't know why. He just always hits Casey. So, in all seriousness, this is not a joke. I'm not going to be using these. They're going to stay in the box. The winner, once I hit 30,000 subscribers, I'll do a draw like I did for 10,000, like I'm going to do for 20,000. And the winner will get a dual SD card reader and dual Angelbird AV Pro SD cards. And these are fast. You're looking at maximum read speed of 300 megabytes per second, not bits, and maximum write speed of almost the same, 280 megabytes per second. I wish I could afford these myself. I've spent so much on memory lately that I'm just... I can't wait for the credit card bill to come in. So yeah, this is what I'm giving away. And guys, a big shout out to Angelbird, because I told them what I was interested in doing. And I was asking them, look, is there anything you'd be willing to offer up as for the draw? And they said, well, look, would you be... one thing I said was, well, look, storage plays a huge part. It doesn't matter what camera somebody has. If we look at UHS 2 cards, it works in pretty well every camera. Even a 70D, we have UHS 1, they're backwards compatible. So I thought this is a great way. It's very inclusive. And a big thank you to Angelbird. They didn't charge me anything for this. They said, yes, no problem. And if getting to 20,000 is any indication of how long it's going to take to get to 30,000, they're going to get plenty of airplay. But no, seriously, thanks to the folks over at Angelbird for offering this up. It's going to go ahead on the shelf there. You won't see it. It's going to be down below. But as soon as we hit 20,000 subscribers, this is going to be our prize. And I'm hoping it's before the end of January. I was figuring around mid to late January for this. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. This is a great prize. Anybody who wins this is great. I think the retail value of this is somewhere between $300 and $400, and I think that's US, so it's a terrific prize. But on that bombshell, thanks so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. Don't forget to subscribe for your chance to win the Synco Lav S6E and M3 shotgun microphones. I'll be giving these away in about 2,000 subscribers once the channel reaches 20,000. And then at 30,000, this prize will be given away to one lucky viewer. And I'll keep offering up other prizes every 10,000 or so subscribers until this channel reaches 100,000 subscribers. And at that point, I'll be offering up to one lucky viewer the Canon EOS R5 full-frame mirrorless camera. And on the second bombshell of this video, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Seriously, if I don't see you before Christmas and New Year's, have yourself a happy Christmas, happy New Year. And I believe today's Friday, so happy Hanukkah. And I think Ramadan's coming up too. There's so many holidays. No wonder they say happy holidays. There are so many of them. They should all be in the calendar. Anyhow, thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.